Let's bring in our legal expert to weigh in San Francisco, Paul Henderson, BNC's legal contributor and veteran prosecutor. Okay, so Paul, 10 hours of deliberations and not one question from the jury. Now, what that told me was that this jury was crystal clear on the evidence, right? Not one question. No playback, no readback, no can we see exhibit A, B, C, none of that. So what that told me is that these jurors are about to render guilty verdicts across the board. That's what that told me. What did it tell you? What signaled in your mind when you heard that a verdict was going to be read today at 5 o'clock?
Listen, Yodit, I consider myself a skilled prosecutor and a skilled trial lawyer, as are you. And so we are reading the same messages. And remember, the state has the burden. So when people come out, when juries come out and they don't have questions or they don't have readbacks, and keep in mind that they don't get their notes, right? So they have to ask these questions. But when they can come to a conclusion that quickly without having to do or go back on those things, that's usually an indication that we're going to get a guilty verdict, and that's exactly what happened today. And so I felt a little optimistic when they came back so quickly with a verdict, that they were not falling into a rabbit hole of reviewing esoteric language or conversations with the jury instructions, or they got lost in the weeds of everything that the defense threw up on the wall to try and distract them from this verdict, and that they followed what we all saw, what we were all hoping for, which was this verdict, which was very clear. And remember, one of the things, and I'm sure this is something that you already know, they had no contemplation of sentencing at all. That's sanitized and removed from the evaluation of what was going on. So the only conversation, the only conclusion, and the work that they did was to affirm whether or not the charges would be held up against Derek Chauvin, and that's exactly what they did. And so it was not really that much of a surprise to me that this was the verdict when I heard how quickly they had come back without question, without redress, and without concerns that they had to bring to the judge or the advocates.
And you know what's funny is that 10 hours seems like too much time to deliberate for a lot of people who believe that this was an open shut case. But when you have a case involving murder and the defendant is a cop, yeah, 10 hours isn't a whole lot of time. And so it was surprising. Now, the question for many is what's next? What does sentencing look like? Because even with a guilty verdict, folks are skeptical that Chauvin will spend any significant time in prison. Now, I want to show viewers what kind of time Chauvin is facing for each count. Now, he was found guilty for murder 2, which is 40 years, murder 3, 25 years, and for the second-degree manslaughter, he's looking at 10 years, right? So
yes,
people want to see Chauvin get the max for murder 2. That's the most severe charge. But we know Chauvin has no criminal history, and under Minnesota's sentencing guidelines, a person with no criminal history won't get the max. Should folks manage their expectations, Paul?
Okay. I don't think so. Now, here's why. There's a lot to unpack there with what you just said. And so remember, the jury doesn't get to determine this. So part of what we saw already, that Blakely motion that people were watching this week, was Chauvin making a decision that he wanted the judge to make the sentencing decision, not the jury. I think that was a very smart move, because what you don't want, especially with the jury that could come back this quickly, was for them to determine guilt. And while they're thinking about that guilt, to make a determination about your punishment, that's something you want sanitized from the defense perspective. And so the judge is going to be making that ruling. Now, what's going on behind the scene, and this is already done from prosecutors, is a sentencing departure motion. So that means that the prosecution is going to ask beyond the scope of the limitations and beyond the limitations of what the normal laws that exist there would be, which could limit Chauvin to just 12 and a half years as a first offender. But because they have filed this motion to be heard, which would argue the aggravated terms, and they will take into consideration factors like this incident took place in front of a child. We saw that child, and she testifies. Because this incident took place in combination with several other actors and cops, which are still to be tried. Because of the heinous nature of the behavior that resulted in the murder. All of these are going to be grounds and the reasons to depart from that limitation and to ask for the maximum sentence. And that's before we have a conversation about whether or not these sentences are going to run concurrently or consecutively, because that's the judge's option as well, to stack all of the cases one on top of each other so that they don't run at the same time. And I think this judge, who has had a history of heavy sentencing or appropriate sentencing commensurate with crimes that he has evaluated, I'm not very concerned about that restriction that's encoded in the Minnesota law of 12 and a half years as a maximum being applied in this case at this time. I'm hoping that's not where we're going, but there's a lot to be reviewed over the next 6 weeks when we get the PSI report from probation and then the ultimate arguments and decision from the judge in about 8 weeks.